Japan's rich legacy in boxing has captivated fans worldwide for decades. Since the early 20th century, Japanese boxing has produced champions whose technical skill, resilience and warrior spirit have elevated them to global acclaim. Legends such as Fighting Harada have paved the way not only for putting Japanese boxing on the map, but also securing Japan's record as Asia's most prolific producer of world champions. Yet despite this prestigious history, Japanese boxing has reached new heights in recent years. This generation is arguably the strongest yet, with Japanese fighters dominating the lower weight classes and showing no signs of slowing down. Leading the charge is of course the monster Inoue, known for his devastating power, complete boxing style and relentless knockouts. But hot on the heels of Inoue is another rising star, Junto Nakatani, a crafty southpaw with an arsenal of techniques. Nakatani is swiftly building a reputation off his own dominating performances. In this breakdown, I'm going to dive into what makes Junto Nakatani one of Japan's most exciting boxers today, and why he's emerging as a worthy contender to challenge the monster Inoue as Asia's best, and even the world. So on that note, let's get right into it. Before diving into Nakatani's skill set, let's first examine his stance and posture. Junto, fighting out of a southpaw stance, uses a long wide base, usually staying low in a crouched position, keeping his head off the centre line to his left, while this position also helps him sit down on his punches, helping to maximise power, but it also gives him a unique defensive advantage as well.
I like the neutral posture of Nakatani, how he leans over like that and stays low. It's easy for a taller fighter to stand tall, and they oftentimes get hit by shorter fighters who know how to punch up.
So far he's been one of the taller, lankier guys in the divisions he's fought, and this low stance is particularly strategic as it negates the risk of shorter opponents landing effective overhands, punches that can typically exploit a taller fighter's upright stance, and something we've seen many times before. Not to mention, this is a typical punch orthodox fighters look to throw against southpaws. Junto also implies a long guard style which allows him to keep opponents at distance while taking full advantage of his reach. By extending his lead hand slightly forward, he maintains that control over range and tempo, keeping his opponents on the outside while setting up punches from a position that he can easily reach. And this guard not only keeps opponents at bay, but it also allows him to utilise this reach to control the fight's distance and rhythm, landing jabs and straight punches before opponents can get close enough to counter effectively. But the benefits of his reach go beyond just distance control. Like many long-limbed fighters, Junto is able to leverage his extended frame to generate additional power in his punches. By using his full reach and applying torque, he creates that force behind his shots, delivering a surprising level of impact when he connects. With his mix of reach, stance and long guard tactics, Junto Nakatani has developed a style that makes the most of his physical assets. Perhaps the single most important punch in the entirety of Junto's arsenal is of course his jab, as this sets up all his other offensive moves, while of course being one of the taller, lankier guys in the divisions he's fought. Junto really does try to make full use of this against his competitors. But what I really like about Junto's jab is how active he is with it. He's constantly probing and pawing his jab at his opponents again and again, rather than trying to hurt them with the jab all the time. He'll use this probing motion to get them into a pattern or rhythm so he can get reactions out of them, but he uses it in various ways. When he throws his jab to close the distance, it's often akin to that of an Olympic fencer, extending himself outwards while also stepping in with his feet to break that extra gap between him and his opponent.
Fighter Shuichiro Yoshino took advantage.
ですけれども、
このジャブをかわせるかというところでしょうか。第3ラウンドは中谷、左のボディ炸裂しました。一方の望月も距離を詰めてはいますが。
While as a southpaw, he's stepping in with his feet, looking to get the outside position against orthodox fighters, so he can land his jab cleaner, or even his backhand. But what impresses me most is how he changes up the rhythm when he throws the jab. As I just mentioned before, he's continuously pawing out his jab, which on many occasions forces his opponent to jab with him. And out of nowhere, he'll throw a stiff jab in between the probes, or a powerful left cross.
The best punch that I like from Nakatani is the jab.
You know, he shoots it, it has power on it. He leaves it out there just a second longer than what I'm used to seeing guys do, just to keep Acosta at range so that way he can land his right hand.
And be physical. Good shot right there from Nakatani, but he should also throw to the body. Clean, crisp shots.
Career have been against really tough opponents. You go back to 2013.
This was a very similar move to what former Japanese star Yamanaka used to use, who was also a southpaw, while we've even seen the monster Inoue use this from an orthodox stance. Junto also does a great job in terms of where he'll aim, constantly changing the target, mixing up jabs to both the head and to the body. And to really make things that much harder for his opponent is his utilization of feints, constantly feinting low then high, or high then low, or even look to feint with the jab before immediately throwing a hard jab behind it.
Defense for the first time of that WBO World.
This often leads to his fights becoming one-sided affairs, as his opponent can't get a grasp of his jab or what he'll do with it next. Another extra layer to his jab is that sometimes he does like to leave it extended, in between the space between him and his competitors, which can help him defensively keep the distance, while sometimes he'll just use it to pin his opponent or frame off them so he can keep them in place or move off to a different angle. Considering how good Junto's jab is, you could argue his use of the backhand is even more deadlier. And in actual fact, the way he throws the straight is actually very reminiscent to Manny Pacquiao.
One thing to remember though, is Pacquiao now has been...
Morales, a true gladiator.
15 seconds, down goes Morales again. He's already wobbly at this point. Pacquiao's speed, his power.
And he has his timing down already. Boom.
Oh, there's a right hand that wobbles him. He landed it right on the temple.
Nakatani, kind of like Pacquiao, he likes to get momentum with that left hand and barrel in with it. And I think that may have been the shot that opened up the nose of Acosta.
And just like Manny a southpaw, Junto likes to get the momentum off his feet as he pushes in with a straight towards his opponent, also rotating his hips as well at the same time. Quite often, he'll commit so much to this punch that sometimes even just one foot is on the ground as he's throwing it. And due to this lunging movement from his cross, he tends to throw it in a very far off distance that most opponents would think he'd be too far to reach. And while lunging for the most part is very dangerous to do, Junto seems to get away with it because he's such a master with his lead hand and can use this perfectly to set up the straight punch, utilizing the rhythm changes first with his lead hand before all of a sudden unleashing the straight when his opponent falls for it. His straight is also being set up as he's throwing the jab, and I guess you could call this chambering the punch. For example, as Nakatani jabs, he already brings his rear hand back to create the momentum with this punch. Usually this could be seen as telegraphing, but this is why his straight is hidden behind the jab, and at the moment it's working very effectively.
Hard left hand, right down the middle. Another one comes behind it.
However, when the opposition steps up, he'll need to watch out he doesn't get countered himself. The other thing about his backhand is that he usually throws it from his hip as well, while sometimes the distance needs to travel a bit longer by throwing it from further down. This longer punch distance allows him to use the full technique to produce the power and momentum, thus resulting in the devastating power he has behind it. The other thing about his straight punch is that it's also very diverse. It always starts from his hip as he looks to throw it, and by doing this he can change the angle to either land to the head or the body. He can even change the trajectory of the punch as well in terms of its position. However, like I said, it's not like he's always lunging in with these punches, but in actual fact he's looking to generate as much power as possible by getting the full extension in his straight punch by the time it lands. And I'm not gonna lie, it actually really reminds me of the likes of Adonis Stevenson, another famous southpaw who is known for his devastating punching power. Sometimes as well, he'll like to double up his straight punches in a row. This was something Manny Pacquiao also used to do. Junto will bring his rear shoulder forward and flick out the straights at his opponent to get a reaction, while it also puts him in a body position so he can set up his right hook or jab.
Any kind, skill, different type punches.
Both guys going to the body simultaneously. And remember, you already have a 10-8 round against you.
Yep.
Especially with one shot. You're changing the speed in the
He did a lot still. The first half of the fight, it just was with more.
Aside from his jab and straight punches, Junto also likes to throw wide rear hooks. The reason as to why he throws it so wide is so he can go around the high guard of the opponent, and he quite often uses this in perfect combination with his straight punch. You'll get them covering up the front once his backhand is landing, and then this is when he goes around the guard with the wide hook. The other important aspect to this is that the straight and the wide hook are both initiated in the same way through the jab. Both punches all come from the hip, and this almost becomes a guessing game for the opponent to figure out which punch is coming next.
One arm to be tied up. I think he's still fighting on.
And he says, look, we've got a guy with a strong will and
with some shots tonight. He's had his way for the most part in this fight.
Great job of mixing up his punches. That one had an effect as well.
Staggered once again.
Right hand from Nakatani is dangerous, man. He slips on the outside.
Perhaps his most devastating punch is his uppercut. And what's very interesting about it is the fist placement when throwing this. Instead of keeping his fist horizontal, he opts to keep it as a vertical instead, with his thumb facing towards him. What's the point of this, you may ask? Well, by doing this, it helps his fist get through the much smaller gap between an opponent's high guard, and he will use this uppercut to constantly pierce through the high guard again and again, rendering it useless at close range encounters. When Nakatani is at close range, this is his go-to punch, especially when in the clinch. Even when the opponent is exiting away from the clinch, Junto will keep up the pressure with his uppercuts and start to throw them from longer range. He doesn't only just throw one at a time, he's constantly throwing it in a combination and making sure to get as much power he can with each one. I also feel these uppercuts perfectly complement his taller build. Short opponents often try and bob and weave to try to get closer to him, but as they're making these movements, Junto often gets them to bring their head down, giving him the perfect opportunity to strike with this punch. Another thing he does to better time this uppercut is his use of the lead hook. As he throws the hook, opponents try to duck under it, but as soon as they duck under, they are met with this uppercut as well. Sometimes Junto will just simply flick out the straight to occupy their guard. They get hit with another uppercut.
Walking right into these shots.
Scored in round number 2. Big clash of heads earlier.
Side, not just taking punches, but landing as well.
He also does a really good job in terms of mixing it up to the body. As I said earlier, he tends to always start from the same position, from his hip, and it makes it really hard to tell whether he's aiming for the body or the head.
Yeah, he's kind of using that to hurt Nakatani because he did it. He did it, so he knows he can hurt.
How are we going to top that last fight? How are we going to live up to the expectations based on our performance?
Good bow. Oh, that hurt.
Nice shot. That one hurt. That delayed reaction.
But more than just an offensive means, Junto also uses the uppercut as a defensive means, using it as a counterpunch when opponents rush in on him, as he looks to slip their punch, and without question makes them second guess if they should do it again.
There's some redness and some blood.
Nakatani started out really, nice double uppercut.
Gets there, he'll do the job.
Yamauchi just out of position and eating uppercut.
In terms of Nakatani's counters, his most effective is the simple step back. Now this may seem like a very basic technique to most, but mastering the fundamentals is often all that you need. Unlike someone like Bivol who will step back and then step back in, Junto only does the former. This is due to his natural reach advantage over most of the smaller guys in the division. They'll overextend in the exchanges with their punches and get themselves off balance into Junto's range, where Junto can perfectly hit them back. The punch he counters them with can pretty much be anything to the head or the body. It could be a jab, a straight, an uppercut, or even a combination. It really depends on the situation.
Judo fighters, the WBO flyweight champion.
He dragged him over.
He did, because he knew what he was doing. 30 seconds left here to go in round 5. Will Junto Nakatani be able to finish?
That body shot.
Cortez is clamming up and down again in round 5.
Your shirt's looking like Nakatani's trunks, and it's all a ghost.
He's just really struggled to find his way inside.
He'll slip in that left hand.
30 seconds left.
A minute ago, Nakatani turned his knuckles down with his left hand, and that's something that's taught by Rudy Hernandez. Turns down with the knuckles, and that's a technique that Rudy Hernandez teaches his fighters.
What does that do for you?
It basically, it basically puts those knuckles onto your head, and that, rather than the front of your fist. Knuckles crashing down on you could cause a big impact, and it can hurt.
Another effective tool in his arsenal is the overhand, and it is usually at its best when it is used as a counter. To pull this off, he does the complete opposite of the skill just mentioned previously. Instead of stepping back, he now steps in with the opponent as they rush towards him. As he steps in, he places his front foot on the outside of his opponent's front foot to create a better angle for this overhand. Nakatani also puts himself in a lower position, so he can also potentially dodge any punch coming at him. All this sets up the perfect opportunity for Junto to land the devastating knockout, like he did with Maloney.
Here's what happened.
My gosh.
Watch his legs. That's all you need to know. Watch the legs.
Flick jab. Stand, get in range. He sees him coming in, times him perfectly. Gets his head off the line, looping left hand. Knuckles pointed down. Oh my goodness.
It's as big as it gets. It's as powerful of a single knockout punch as you'll see in the sport. Junto Nakatani wins a world championship and stays undefeated with this monstrous left hand. And I want you to see it in real time and listen to it. Here it is. Listen to this punch.
Now, no one is perfect, and Nakatani does like to punch from his hip, and his chin can be very open at times. Both his hands are very low, especially when he initiates the action and starts throwing combinations. Junto also tends to punch wide, causing his arms to take longer time to retract back into the position. This has caused him to get cracked on the chin a few times in the past, and I feel he often gets away with this due to the shorter reach of his opponents he's faced thus far. However, when he goes up in weight or faces a bigger puncher, whose reach is just as long as his, I believe this could start to be troublesome for him, or even just someone willing to take angles against him. While I believe he'll need to be careful not to get caught out himself with his probing lead hand, while he'll also need to be careful in his use of the uppercuts, as a better opponent may be able to time him with hooks. Despite some of these flaws about Junto Nakatani, I still think his strengths greatly outshine his weaknesses, and he remains not just one of the best boxers in Asia, but one of the best boxers in the world today. The fact he's already a 3-weight world champion by 26 just shows you how good this guy is. Personally, I'd love to see him fight the likes of Inoue or even Bam Rodriguez one day, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was to eventually give the monster one of his toughest fights. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Junto Nakatani. Do you think he has what it takes to reach even greater heights and face the pound for pound stars in and around him? I'd love to know. This has been Jamie from Boxing Life. If you enjoyed this breakdown, why not check out one of these? As always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.